Hey everyone, welcome back. I am happy to announce that we have a portfolio. It took a week and a half longer than I wanted, but we did it, so let's get into it. For those just joining, I'm Bethany. I'm redesigning my portfolio in about a month so I can apply to senior product design jobs after I graduate from my master's program in a few months. I'm documenting each step of the process to keep myself accountable and hopefully help other designers who are also working on their portfolios. Last video, we left off with a half-baked portfolio that I kind of hated, so I'm excited to show y'all what changes I made in the feedback phase based on critique from other designers and my own self-critique. So, quick review. The first draft of my portfolio, the layout was stale, the narrative wasn't cohesive, my user research and heavy process work was not apparent at all, and the visual content was not capturing my work. I first sat down with a former classmate, Melanie, who works as a senior product designer in Berlin now, and she gave me some great feedback on my messy first draft that gave me a direction for improvement. Her suggestions were to change the audience metadata to timeframe, which she made a good argument for why that would be more useful for recruiters. She suggested that I reorganize the imagery for my big redesign case study. She also was missing high level all the things that I had touched. I had already been doing in the quick skim kind of a STAR framework, which is situation, task, action, result. I just didn't have the action. So what I did was add in the action. What did I actually do? And then she also suggested that I add in subheads under my deep dive to improve skimmability. Super basic hierarchy things. And I used that as an opportunity to tie in like my previous criteria that I figured out in the research phase so that anyone who's skimming through my case studies, which most people will do, will be able to get those quick hits of relevant content in that skim. Something important to do when receiving design feedback generally is to separate the changes you feel are A, in line with your goals, and B, fit within your constraints. So my constraint is time. So the feedback that I received over the past week, I put into one of three buckets. One is a V1, which means immediately change. V2, change after I finish my master's. And then 3, I'm not going to make that adjustment as recommended. Which is okay. It's important to listen to the feedback that you get, but you do not have to do everything that is suggested. Then I took several days off, which was a healthy step back from weeks of heavy heads down portfolio work. So when I returned to my portfolio, I had a fresh perspective. I started by reevaluating typography and layout. Refreshing my typography felt like a good way to get excited about my portfolio again. But typography can easily become a black hole of like what feels right. Which is an endless fool's errand. So I wrote down some criteria to give myself parameters. I wanted my type to be clean, but not without personality. Didn't want it to be associated with a specific industry or product. I wanted it to be legible. I wanted to feel appropriate for a product designer as opposed to an editorial or brand designer. And I wanted it to balance kind of a human and tech feel, which ended up becoming the philosophy that I wanted to communicate visually in my portfolio. I reworked my layout to be more templatized, but also more of a dynamic flow as the user moved down the page. I added a lot more process work and user research so that my portfolio underscored my UX contributions just as much as my UI. I also pulled in more user-focused impact metrics as I was able to. The edits phase is also a good time to check my work against what my original goal was and what criteria I was mapping my content to. So previous work, check. Skills, check. Values and philosophies, kind of integrated that into my about page, and here and there in the content of my case studies. Succinctly, unsure. This is a really subjective word. Some people will say that my case studies are too long. Some will say too short. I landed on a middle ground that I feel comfortable with, but it can definitely be streamlined. I will do that later. Also an important point, accessibility work. My headings needed to be in the right order. All my colors were accessible and high contrast. All videos and animations needed to make sure that they could be paused. All images had alt text descriptions or were marked decorative. And I ensured responsiveness across all breakpoints. I also added an accessibility statement that outlined where my portfolio is not accessible. Also a way to contact me if something is really not working. Once I got my portfolio to a place that I felt pretty good about getting another round of feedback, I sent the link to a Slack group that I'm a part of that is made up of former coworkers who are designers, and they range from mid-level to director level, and they gave me some great feedback. The mid-level designer gave a great, really detailed list of things to address. And then the director levels gave more of a quick hit based on the really limited amount of time that they had to review, which felt most like reality and how much time design leads will have to actually review my work. So based on their feedback, I added more impact metrics. I added the image caption referencing to make a little bit more sense. I added a second quick hit project that just linked to a project I did without the full case study attached. I cut out some superfluous visuals, added some ones that were higher impact, and then added hover states. They gave me some other more intensive feedback, like adding a lightbox to my images to allow more zoomed in evaluation of my hi-fi UIs. Totally agree, but that will happen after I finish my master's. My final piece of feedback that I needed was to send my portfolio to leadership at my former company to verify that I wasn't presenting any information that felt sensitive or incorrect. I know not everyone is in a position to do this part, but it was a nice gut check to ensure I wasn't unintentionally exposing data that fell under an NDA. Finally, some polish items, cleaned up my styles, fiddled with spacing across all breakpoints, checked my links, made sure that they went to the right places, and added animations. And we're done. Well, done for this V1. I did indeed do this in a little over a month. I'm completely focused on my thesis now, but I have a solid portfolio to apply to jobs within the next few months. Once I get interviews, I'll make separate in-depth case study presentations based on the company and the specific skills I want to call out for that role that I'm interviewing for. The site is now live if you want to explore. Give me more feedback if you find something that isn't working, something that can be improved, and if I didn't cover something in this series in particular that you would really like to know, please let me know. Send me a DM, leave a comment, and maybe I can do a final FAQ video on portfolio building. Thanks for following along. Thanks for keeping me accountable. I've had a lot of people send me messages that they're also doing their portfolios while I'm doing my portfolio as a motivation, and that warmed my heart. So thanks, guys. Best of luck.